Good evening, everyone on Zoom and here. I'm Audrey Mandela. I'm the chair of Women in Telecoms and Technology, WiTT, and we have one other WiTT board director with us tonight, Helen Kaliski. We also have WiTT's founder, Stephanie Liston. Where did Stephanie go? I'm sure she'll be back in the room in a moment with us tonight. So first, I'm up here because I unfortunately need to let you know that Annette Nabavi, who was going to chair the panel, is ill, and she hasn't been able to join us. But fortunately, Camille Mendler is going to do that for us. And so she's going to speak and chair. So thank you, Camille, very much. Also, Claire Limbert had a family emergency and has not been able to attend. We found that out about 10 minutes before we were supposed to start. So we apologize for those changes, but I think we're still going to have quite a dynamic and interesting panel given the fascinating speakers that we have. So that's enough from me, and I'm going to let Camille get on with the event. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. And my job, and I'm going to try to step into Annette's formidable shoes, and start by welcoming you and saying hello to all the panelists. And I will introduce them each, one after the other. So to my left, my far left, is Kimberly Wells. Now, she's a partner at Bird & Bird, our host tonight, so thank you very much for having us. I think this is one of several events that WiTT has had here, so thank you very much, right here in the centre of London. And you joined the firm in 2012, and you've advised on various different technology and telecommunications projects. And I read here that you spent also a year on secondment to an Australian firm. And Australia is an interesting market, of course, where you advised on a range of projects, including around Australia's national broadband rollout. So you have plenty of things to say there, I would imagine. Or following on, our next panelist is Dr. Nektaria Efthymiou. Now, she is the Network Platform and Security Research Director at BT Group. I've seen her speak before. She, an engineer by training. You're doing actually a lot of the cool stuff, right? AI, open networks, security. Well, I don't know if security is cool, but it's one thing that does make money, which is great, since that's one of the things we're talking about. You've been in the industry for a couple of decades. BT, you've been at BT for how long now?
5 years.
5 years, okay. And you've worked with various operators, Telefonica, but also some of the vendors as well. And so you've got business knowledge as well as engineering knowledge, what we sorely need in this business, right? And last but not least is Maria Grazia Pecorari. She is the Director of Strategy and Wholesale at Vodafone UK. Vodafone UK going through a momentous change in of itself, a merger, which I know has kept you just a little busy. And it sounds like you actually left BT, where you're at for about 8 years, to join Vodafone to what, help usher in this merger? Was that part of your plan?
Part of the attraction.
Part of the attraction was being involved in a merger. Well, your last role at BT was Managing Director of Strategy and Digico, so you've also been involved very much in the future of the telco, which is what we're talking about tonight. And I'm Camille Mendler. I'm Chief Analyst for Service Provider Enterprise at Omdia, a research company, and apparently I'm a very well-respected analyst who's worked across many different aspects of the telecoms landscape. Okay, that's me. I was asked to give a quick intro before we break into the questions. And I have to tell you, I've been involved in the telecoms industry for over 20 years. And I've been immensely proud of being involved in telecoms. I don't think it's a dirty word. I don't think it's such a bad thing to be in telecoms, nor indeed do I think that connectivity is non-sexy. I'm particularly happy. I mean, part of my job, most of my job is helping other people make filthy lucre, and that's fine. But I'm also very proud when I do work in emerging markets and maybe conflict zones. I worked in places like Bosnia and some other places have, been difficult markets. And I know that you can make a huge difference bringing in telecommunications infrastructure. So in a way, it pains me that we're talking about what is this tortured history of when future of the telco. I mean, let's remind ourselves of the achievements. I mean, this is an industry that is about to be 150 years old. It has survived 150 years. And actually some of the companies in this room have been around for BT has been around for more than a century in various guises. In fact, by the way, quick fact, the first telephone exchange was not so far away. Does anyone know where that was in London?
Buckingham.
They probably got one soon after, but it was in Lombard Street in the City of London that the first telephone exchange and company was set up. It was called the Telephone Company, not very imaginative, bit of marketing help needed even then. And that was in 1879, and the first major company was the Bell Company in the US, and that was 1877. So they were 150 years old, with the attention span of a toddler. And I say that as someone who next week will be in New York at the Brooklyn 6G Summit, talking about something we haven't even defined that's going to transform our future. Anyway, I digress a little bit. Anyway, so there are various things we need to be concerned about. Right now, connectivity is a $1.4 trillion market. It actually has been growing gently. There's been a bit of dipping and things of that nature. But is that enough? We talk a lot about telco to techco transformation. What does that mean? And it seems like service providers out there don't want to do what they used to do. They want to do something very, very different and maybe make more money by charging for more than connectivity, but certainly a lot of demand has been put onto the network. And the big question is, what does it take to be successful in a digitalizing world? No question about that. And what does being a successful telco really entail? And I think we'll start with the oldest company, not the oldest person. We're not talking about age here, but let's start with Nektaria. Could you give us a sense of what you think the challenges are facing a major service provider, major telco like you, and how you deal with that, how you rise to the challenge? What is it going to take? An easy question to start with, softball there.
I think that works, is it? Oh, perfect, okay. So before I tell you the challenges, I will start with a point you mentioned. I think as an industry, we need to be proud for what we've done, and we came a long way. And we have achieved now that connectivity is part of our life. It's not an item, it's not the mobile phone you need to get, it's not whether you will have a connection or not where you are. It is actually part of our life and is considered as a given, right? So nobody's questioning whether you will be able to make a call. Everybody thinks it is gonna happen. Nobody's questioning whether you will have data because they're there. So the challenge now, and it's not a challenge, for me it's an opportunity, is effectively how do we then take telco to the next level? Because we have reached a point from growth, right? We have seen this industry growing for the last 30 years. I won't go 150, but in the last 30 years, I have seen this industry really doing very well. And we have reached the point now where the revenues are not growing anymore. The capital market is not trusting us that we can actually generate growth, and you can see the trend we have in terms of market capitalization and revenue growth is going down compared to other companies, technology companies. So we need to change that. We need to do something different. And we have several options. First of all, the first thing we need to do, we need to rationalize our legacy, because our networks, especially brownfield operators, that have a lot of legacy that is there for like 30 years and the equipment is still there, it is used. And gradually we're shutting it down, we migrate to new technologies, but legacy creates a lot of inefficiencies in the system. And as a result of that, it increases our cost base. So we need to optimize our cost base. The first thing is we shutting down legacy, and actually in BT we are doing that. We have already completed the 3G sunsetting, and we are in the process of actually migrating our voice. And we are in a journey to simplify the network. The other thing we need to do is we need to start thinking more how we can optimize our networks, because our networks, they're built, if you like, as I call them Lego towers. They're like monolith, and they're built vertically. For the service you want to do, you build the stack, and then you build another one for another service and carry on. And the problem is you create a lot of duplication and inefficiency. So we need to find a way to simplify our networks, to make them more flexible, to make them autonomous. I would use this word because automation for me is actually driving more efficiencies into the network, into the stack. So we need to start thinking how we can move this. And I can carry on for the whole hour.
I'm sure you could, but let's give.
I better stop to give the
And I think
opportunity
in
to someone
summary,
else.
what you're saying is get your house in order and get rid of the old stuff in the garage. Is one way of putting it, is important. Now, Maria, from your perspective, and Vodafone is a challenger, but it's been around for a long time, well, fair amount of time, right? Do you think that Vodafone sees itself as a telco or something else? And are you taking a different approach, or is it the same thing, sorting through the old stuff first?
I have to say, I can do it without the microphone. Love the network. So that's what we do.
She loves the network. If people
Love
can't see that,
connectivity.
I like that.
Little heart. So Vodafone is a challenger, younger, 40 years or so. So everything is relative, I suppose. Challenger in the UK. I think I'd like to actually go back to your first question, and then I can put the Vodafone in the context. So you referenced the merger. So as a result of the merger, we have done a lot of thinking, about, why is telco where it is, right? And one thing that I've learned actually out of this process, I hadn't realized a fundamental or not really given full appreciation to a fundamental microeconomic fact, which is, if you look at the networks, first the fixed, but then mobile, what has happened has been an extraordinary expansion of capacity. And what happens is when capacity increases, prices go down. And we almost don't see it because we take it for granted, but that's actually fundamentally the microeconomic context that telco lives in, and for a number of reasons, technology, regulation, etc. A lot of the value which is created by telco is actually externalized. The rest of society or other parts of the value chain benefit from it. But just to bring it to life, I want to just explain it like in mobile numbers. So in 2012, which was the start of 4G, 1 gig of data costed retail £234. 1 gig of data. And the average consumer used 0.04 gig of data. These days, a gig of data is less than £2. It's £1.50 maybe retail, and the average user uses 8 gig of data. So fundamentally, the price is up per gig, which is what goes on the network, is a fraction of what it used to be just over 10 years ago. And I really have to think very hard to find another category that had such a price collapse per unit of kind of good consumed. So that's a really important macroeconomic context. And this is why then there are 4 imperatives, such as modernizing the network, thinking about IT in a different way, and sources of value really matters. But the fundamental context is not going to change, because after 5G you're going to have a 6G, and
maybe
bigger
that's TBD
over the long. But you don't have 5G SA yet. 5G. The process of upgrade of the network isn't finished. 5G SA phones are just being released. So this ongoing process of capacity expansion, but also demand, the tsunami creation, is unfolding every single day, and that's the kind of conundrum there's as telco we're stuck in.
That's one way of looking at it. The other way to look at it is, are you serving your customers better? And from that perspective, can you actually, derive more value from that? But we'll answer that in a minute. I do want to get Kimberly to give a sense of her views of what the challenges are from the telco clients you're dealing with. I don't know how impartial you can be about this.
I can be very impartial.
Okay, all right, try.
So, no, the best thing about my role is that I deal with kind of everybody in the ecosystem. So we deal with the traditional telcos, we deal with the altnets, we deal with the OEMs, we deal with some of the end users from a B2B perspective. So you see challenges at kind of all areas. In terms of what we tend to be seeing a lot of in the last couple of years, it's been build, 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 grow fast mentality. We've been involved a lot in putting the networks on the ground, but also buying capacity on behalf of our clients on the networks. But and there's been some challenges, particularly for altnets, in terms of rising construction costs, tougher to get finance. So there's a lot of challenges around that. But I think it was Nektaria that said, I'm kind of more interested. That's not really the exciting part. The exciting part is what you can then do with the networks once you've got them and once you've built them. And I'm very happy to be the first person to mention AI on this panel, but it's 2024, we've got to mention it. So I guess it's what do you do with it? Do you build products and services? Do you optimize the networks to improve the customer experience? How do you generate revenue out of those networks to reinvest and to just make money? So there's obviously a huge race to be AI ready. This is a massive topic, and it sort of resonates across our client base, whether it's telcos or whether it's tech companies or anyone operating in any other sector. But I think the thing that we're starting to see a trend towards is more collaboration. So if there's a few good examples, our Danish team worked with the Novo Nordisk Foundation, who worked with the Centre for AI Innovation and NVIDIA. They're collaborating and using NVIDIA tech to build one of the largest supercomputers, and it's being hosted in a digital realty data center. And the idea is to kind of promote AI innovation. And I guess it's leveraging technology to get there quicker and be the ones that are leading the way on it. Another example is Telenor, who they announced at MWC that they were also going to enter into some sort of partnership with NVIDIA. So I think that is kind of the direction of travel that we're seeing. Lots more collaboration, and it'll be interesting to see how that sort of plays out.
Okay, I'll add a couple to that. I mean, the AI piece in of itself makes us re-examine distance. 20 plus years ago, someone will tell me exactly when, a journalist and economist called Francis Cairncroft wrote a book called The Death of Distance. And it was all about the major submarine cables being built across the world that were changing the dynamics of bandwidth and all the rest of it. I know that some of the work that you're doing is here in the UK, where we have this fragmentation of small fiber providers. But when you think about AI and NVIDIA and all the partnerships they're creating, there are some strange alliances being built, such as operators in Singapore allying with people who've got data centers and computing power in Iceland, in Norway, and places like that, because you can process those workloads, those AI workloads, cheaper over there and maybe with lower power, even though it's being sent across the world. So distance is coming in again in a way. So we can come back to that in a minute. So the AI piece is an interesting one to come back to. Let's move on and ask some more questions around the broader platform. We haven't really talked much about this in Nektaria, but I wouldn't mind discussing this because it's a point of great interest now, sort of ecosystems, open networks, AI, APIs, and I always get mixed up. AI, API, they're all happening at the same time. Very confusing for an analyst myself to try and sort this out. Anyway, open networks and cloudification in this sort of context. And, very recently we had the major announcement, 2 weeks ago now, actually. And I was actually giving a presentation to people at Ericsson on this topic when the news came out. That was interesting. Ericsson came out with a number of telecom operators regarding a new venture where they're trying to open up a platform so that the network capabilities are made exposed through APIs to drive innovation in digital services. If you don't mind talking, Nektaria, a little bit about what that means. From your perspective, then we'll move on to the wider group.
Okay, so open networks, I mean, everybody has a different definition probably what is open network and how you define it. But for me, in the context of what we're discussing here, open networks is a network that it can expose capabilities that you can monetize And this exposure is happening through APIs that are based on open standards.
It's a big bet, isn't it?
It's a big. Well, actually, let me step back. In this industry, that's not new. So we are monetizing APIs for years. The communication APIs.
Well, using them, but not necessarily monetizing them.
Yes,
only
we are
limited.
monetizing. Actually, in BT, we do have something like, I need to make sure I get the numbers right here, is about 200 million of payments transactions a year based on APIs. And these APIs are APIs that we are actually monetizing already, right? So now and we actually had about 1 billion transactions of digital identity through APIs. Now, the discussion that is happening in the industry now is about the APIs that are driven by Camara. And these APIs...
And Camara, just to
yeah.
explain what Camara is,
Yeah, Camara is a Linux...
all these acronyms, sorry folks, we're throwing them out.
So Camara is a Linux foundation, and they have been tasked by GSMA to develop APIs that they expose the network capabilities, like more detailed network capabilities, more down, if like, in the resources and ability to monetize network capabilities that otherwise operators wouldn't have thought to monetize, actually. But now, with these APIs and this movement of more open architectures, more flexible, cloudify, we have the ability to expose these capabilities and effectively bring the network inside out. So things where we normally use in this industry to develop solutions for a problem, we actually now give to the customers and partners the tools to actually develop the solutions themselves. And this is an opportunity which we need to see what is the demand and what can bring to the industry. But it will require, as you said, an ecosystem to drive the demand. It will require
partnership, yes. And I know that Vodafone has also done a lot in this space too, through some mobile APIs. You've done a heck of a lot, if I remember, on the global side. Anyway, you don't have to talk about it, but I know that you.
I can.
You can. You go on.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was at Ericsson a couple of weeks ago, and they gave a little bit of a demonstration.
You're in Chester as well. The weather was not great, was it?
But fundamentally, is that, as Nektaria was saying, it's about making it easy to use the network.
That's
to
right.
do cool stuff on top. That's the non-technical answer.
Identities might not sound cool, but that's a money spinner, I think.
Yeah.
Imagine real-time identity, you know.
There are many others. So the example the Ericsson showed, and that's because they want to use a 5G. So essentially the ability to have connectivity anywhere. You can expose the network capabilities, and Ericsson being a big mobile vendor, they have an interest in that through their platform. But I as a video game developer, I can create an app that enables me to, whilst a football game is played, to also kind of interact with it digitally. So I can connect connectivity which is fixed and mobile and create this sort of virtual environment. But actually I need the mobile network to be able to track and create a separate digital reality, for stuff that happens where fixed doesn't work. Like that's not a technical, not a technical answer, but just to give an idea. But fundamentally, I think that's how you create. That's how you monetize the network, because the point of API is about the realization that a lot of the value creation is going to be driven by third party. And so the industry is really working hard to do two things, making it easier for others, developers, platform, etc., to create apps that talk to the network in a much reusable, easiest way, but also make it easier to build the solutions that actually use different parts of the network from different vendors into the same solution, making it easier to buy, making it easier to connect, and and that's in a way the nirvana of telco, to really be able to go into the next chapter of the industry.
And because you're all wise and experienced, you put it very well. But unfortunately, not all of the salespeople in the telco space know how to do it. I think that's one of the big issues. If you think about 5G SA, who knows what 5G SA is and how you'd access an API to use an API? Nobody really knows how to do that. But if I say to you, well, you can set up your outside broadcast within 30 minutes, and that will save you time, and you'll be able to do a differentiated experience, or your network will be able to improve your ship turnaround time in your port by X percentage. That is of interest to enterprises. So we need to narrate it a lot better, don't we?
May I do some
narration?
I
please.
think the important thing for me is not the narration as such, because we do that already, right? I mean, in our networks and all the way we work with our customers, we already do this. For me, the part that we need to work more with the APIs is how we can reach the developer community to explain to them how they can actually use these APIs to develop the over-the-top applications they need to develop in order to deliver for their partners and customers the solution they need. And for me, this is the part. And actually, what we do for the first time as an industry, in general, what we are very good in telco is we create solutions. Sometimes we even create the problem, and then we sell the problem and the solution. For the first time, we are exposing a capability and a tool that we invite the partners and the developers and the customers to actually use it. And effectively, we go into this platform model where we recognize that the value is coming from the combined value of everyone that is going to use this platform. And it's a time maybe to reset even some of our perception about what is a competitor. We do need the competition to work together into this platform model.
I don't disagree, but you still have to explain why should I use this. There are other APIs.
Exactly. So we need to, I agree 100% with you. We need to reach the developer community this time to explain how they can use these tools to do what they need to do. Absolutely. And this is a challenge as an industry we need to address. That's why we see these joint ventures and other type of industry movements to actually drive this adoption.
Kimberly, you got any thoughts on where they should be driving in terms of all the data assets and exposure capabilities that the service providers have got? Anything to add?
So in terms of the access to data, obviously telcos have got access to a hugely valuable set of data. There's content data, traffic data, location data, you name it. And I think historically it's been about using the data to analyze mainly. So have a look at, what is driving the network, looking at traffic requirements. But I think we're sort of moving away from that side of things and more into it's certainly the questions coming across our desks are a lot more. Can I use the data from my network to train AI models, which is obviously getting into a slightly more complex arena. And when you're looking at using data in that way, so it's a completely new way of using data, you're sort of wandering into a complex framework of regulation. So obviously today people will be very familiar by now with GDPR requirements, probably with e-privacy requirements, but obviously we've got a whole raft of new regulation coming from the EU. If you're operating in the EU, or if you've got customers who have got at least a foot in the EU, then you're looking at Data Act requirements. And so it's not just AI. If you're looking at delivering new products and services, so connected devices, or if you're putting service wrappers around the connectivity services that you're providing, then you're straying into new territory. So I think there's probably a comment on regulation and a new area that we're sort of straying into.
But given that the telco already is under heavy regulation and manages a lot of data, be it personal data, be it, company data, is there not, it's one thing that's been discussed, is there not a credible role for the telco to be a sort of an orchestrator of all this data? To me, I think about that. That's one thing that's not so much of a stretch.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. The access is there. You already know how to handle the data. It's more just a question of, I don't think it should be prohibitive, the regulatory environment you're operating in. It's just being aware of the new requirements that potentially places you under, which just means that when you're thinking about the new products and services that you're rolling out, it's a question of the strategy sort of factoring all of that element into it.
Yeah. Okay. Maria, do you have any thoughts on that? You're not being restricted too much by regulation at this point. You're still in this sort of exploratory stage of how you can manage data more effectively for monetization. Yes.
I think regulation is like it's
Yeah,
a
it's-
universe.
oh, I know, it's a whole
We'll
universe.
come back. I really do think it's the role of telco is to enhance customer lives. And actually, I want to go back, and we do. You asked me, do we provide the better service? Absolutely. And we take it for granted, and we don't recognize enough the role that the telecommunication does. We kept the country running during COVID.
That's true. That's true.
But just to give an example, and you'll just allow me to. But back to the customer. Here's the difference. Like, so what are all these technologies do? So 5G standalone. And now I'm using Vodafone example, but it can be any example. That's is the potential of what technology can do that matters. But here's some I found really cool stuff. So for example, Vodafone used a slice in the network for the coronation with one broadcaster. And what's the difference with that? That if you don't use a slice in 5G network, what you have to use is a truck with a satellite and like a cable and connected to the camera. Or you have a backpack with your camera, but actually typically you have 3 or 4 SIMs.
Actually, about 8 SIMs.
8 SIMs, oh my God, because you've got to be able to get the network. If you have a slice, you need 1 SIM. And so you can move everywhere and it's much cheaper. I'm told that if you're like a photographer for news, right, and you are in London and say there's a political event, etc. Photographers have more SIMs for more operators, and they know exactly which corner you need to be in the city. So because you need to upload your photo instantly. If you have a slice, the difference can be up to 3 minutes faster. That if you want to have a slice, send a picture real time, that really matters. If you use, if you are in a big event out in a field, or we do Glastonbury, but you can think about any other event. When you go pay, actually, with a card to buy like a hamburger, whatever, the payment is not authenticated there. The information is cached. Then the retailer goes back and once connected to the network, then does the authentication, which means on average between 2.5% and 4% of retail transactions are declined. But by then, the service has already been delivered. And so that's a lot for the retailer. If you have a slice, you can be anywhere with the highest level of concentration, you do real-time authentication. And for any seller of good, 2 to 4% of intake actually does quite a difference. So bottom line to say is that when you think about it from a really customer-centric way, there are, honestly, I think that the limit of what the telecommunication can do is in very onerous regulation, sometimes for the right reason, is we would say is in excessive fragmentation, but also in the obstacles that you have to work through in terms of dealing with the legacy IT, legacy network. But there's ginormous amount of opportunity, and this is why I think telecom is so exciting. It's the nervous system of digital, no network, no digital, really no life as we know it, and that's ultimately that's why I say love the network, and that's really what is the core.
Yes, but I think we also have to be rational that we've had this thing called 5G for about 5 years now. I call it middle-aged. In sort of telecom years equate to dog years, and it means it's pretty much middle-aged now. And we haven't made much money from it, really. And slicing is not a reality yet, though I agree it is worth potentially if we could actually sell it. I spoke to one of the largest outside broadcaster in the world a few months ago, and they said they were very interested in slicing if they could get someone who could deliver it globally. That's one of the challenges. So I'm hoping the API alliances make a difference. What would they be willing to pay? Would they be willing to pay a premium for such a thing? Indeed, they would. They would pay about 15% more than they're currently paying in terms of connectivity, but they were very interested in being able to pay for it on demand. So that's another thing. Moving to on-demand pricing is an interesting one. I don't know if Nektaria, that's one thing you're looking at as well. Because by the way, there's a sustainability issue with that too. You pay for what you use, you can account for the resource utilization. Anyway,
Sorry, you want me to comment?
well, if you want to, yes.
On demand pricing. Oh, there you go.
On-demand consumption, on-demand pricing. That's a new model.
So yeah, possibly. And actually, one of the things that we need to realize with these APIs, the telco-specific APIs, is possibly, obviously, we're still as an industry trying to find how we can monetize those APIs, but the value you can get from those APIs, it depends on the complexity. And complex APIs like the slicing, for example, that requires further integration into the network. It requires resource from the network that may also trigger monetization business models that they will require on-demand pricing. That is something that it can be a possibility. But of course, we need to see how the industry will evolve, as you said, on these. Yeah.
Okay, we may come to that because, by the way, even though one of the folks from Colt couldn't make it today, one of the things they're working on, and actually some of these these chaps here are working on as well, is how green your network is. So routing on demand according to whatever energy utilization there is. So that's something coming in the future, right?
Actually, it is not in the future. We already do.
You do some of it.
We have actually on our mobile network recently. We have actually press release on that. You can have a look for more details. But what we did is we look how we can optimize the energy usage of our network by putting cells to sleep when there's no traffic. And that involves AI, actually, and algorithmic functions at the back in order to detect when there's no demand, and you can actually put the cell to sleep. And that can be one of the ways we can drive a green agenda, but of course, legacy is another element.
Okay, well, let's turn to that hot topic of AI, right? The role of AI in the network. We've heard a little bit about this, and I think there's sort of three areas around AI that we should examine. How you can become more efficient. We talked a little bit about that, and how you can improve the customer experience. The opportunity to create some innovative services, and not least, though hopefully we'll skirt over a little bit, the regulation, security and compliance issues are pretty tough. Not sure how much detail we want to get into here now, but we've talked a little bit about efficiency. Is there anything else that we should know about the ways that you're using AI now? Because it is everywhere, right? Experience.
So when you reference, you can, and this is where a lot of work is happening, I'm sure, across many operators. You can interface with with a machine that actually can give you advice in any language.
Oh, this is Toby, is it? Your
well, the very enhanced.
Does anyone use Toby, the assistant? I mean, many service providers have got Toby, but an equivalent. But Voda was one of the first to have one.
AI-powered. I've seen a demo. It's incredible. Not Toby today, the Toby of the future. It's you can ask a pretty complex question in any language and you get an answer, and that's all machine learning.
Actually, let's just out of interest, let's ask the audience.
Model-based.
I know we've got people on the Zoom, but we'll do a show of hands and we'll relate to this. How many of you in this room have used any sort of Gen AI type of tool? Okay, so in this group, which is a fairly advanced technology group, I would say about 2/3. That's interesting. Okay, and I've played.
I have.
Yeah, I would imagine you would. Yes. Okay, so they're becoming very useful, are they not? Interestingly, Europe and the UK are not the most heavy users of Gen AI. I think we're standing in the UK. We're at, I think, about 50% of consumers in a recent survey we did have played with a Gen AI tool. That compares with about 85% with people in China and India and some other emerging markets. So generational and regional difference are already emerging. Anyway, I don't know if you see that within your organizations as well.
I mean, generally across the board now, Asia and China in particular is, you were talking about 5G and 5G SA, and I was reading yesterday around how 5G and 5G SA is being embedded in every single electricity grid because it helps manage transmission, in a much more efficient way. And I think that's, and I mean, there's hopefully no news to anybody, but there's a lot of reflection now in Europe, UK and Europe, about where are we and are we actually, or how do we avoid Europe being behind in technology, but also in telecom? And so actually this kind of reflection are really key with regards to the role of the ecosystem, the role of regulation, etc., to ensure that Europe remains at the forefront of innovation, because it's not just about us, it's the future of or that's how I think about it, it's the future of our children. And that's why I also think we shouldn't, give up on the sense of opportunity that not only technology, but also you can have in telecom with the right context.
Yes, and with AI. And Kimberly, from your perspective, what sort of AI work are you helping your clients with? What sort of questions, not questions, but what sort of areas of investigation are your clients looking at right now?
So don't worry, I won't delve too far into the regulatory side.
No.
So I think it's a lot about new use cases, and obviously we're lawyers, so we advise on can we do it. So I think when you were saying earlier about the uptake in Europe and the UK being lower, I think partly that may have something to do with people like me going around and saying there's a big framework that you're going to need to comply with if you're going to use this.
So that's not a negative reason to be cautious.
It's not a negative. I think what it is it's maybe lagging slightly, and I think we will see a massive uptake because we're doing a lot of work with our clients saying our sales team want to use it.
And I've seen examples of huge changes when sales teams use a co-pilot and others and engineers.
Exactly, and I mean in the legal space we're starting to use it as well. So I think it's at the moment it's been a big case. It's been a big phase of education for the clients, helping them to come up with governance frameworks, policies around responsible use of AI within organisations. So I think the appetite to use it is there. It's just taking a while to filter through while people kind of get to grips with the regulatory landscape. And I do think that some organisations have got a much higher risk appetite than others. We see a very big swing between those who are just very cautious. They've banned it pretty much for most use cases, to others who, for the kind of more high risk use cases, they don't touch it for now. They want someone else to
BT
be on the front
taken
pages
that
first.
approach. You've been cautious, but you've tried to make it part of your DNA, right, Nektaria?
So yes, let me step back a little bit. I do like this kind of reflecting a little bit what has happened so far. So in telecoms, as an industry, we were using, I think we need to separate. First of all, there's a lot of talk about AI as of the ChatGPT and type of LLM, how we can use this to do different things. But the first versions, if you like, of AI, or the first versions of machine learning, these were algorithms that we're using in our network to optimize different things. We had at some point the concept of self-optimizing networks, and in the radio networks we were using it. So these things are not entirely new if we step back a little bit from the hype of Gen AI and how we can use LLMs. So our networks, they do have a lot of intelligence, and we can actually work with the new models, the machine learning models, and apply different techniques to drive automation in the network, to drive more efficiencies. I talked efficiency before, and it's very important because it will drive not only efficiencies in terms of improving our cost base, but also it will drive delivering better customer experience. Because let me finish on that. Because when we actually are able to predict when something is going to go wrong, and we have the opportunity to act on that before it goes wrong, we deliver better experience. And going back to connectivity is part of our daily life, this is quite important. And then other use cases, for example, that we have done, and in fact in my new team, the research team, which we have demonstrated, is how we can use LLM models, not only on looking document search or using them in the traditional, typical way, I would say, how we can use them, for example, to detect a threat. In cybersecurity is becoming more now prominent, and by opening the networks, we expose more parts of the network into threats. So how we can use AI to detect a threat, how we can use AI to even, in fact, in BT, we have applied some AI to stop, to the digital voice customers, to stop calls that block calls that they don't want to get. So to me, there's a very good opportunity there outside of the Gen AI and what we can do with this that we can apply in our networks to make them more efficient.
The only thing that comes to mind is something about something that BT has done. It's been a proud tradition, and I wonder if AI impacts it. And that proud tradition was to have apprentices. For decades, BT trained people, and young engineers and others, and it could be the same in any industry, right? Where you've got this young generation coming up, making mistakes, doing the scut work, and now we have the AI doing some of that work. I wonder what happens to those. What happens to the apprentices? How do they learn? I just wonder with the other ways of doing that. Do we lose something?
We do honor our apprentice program, and we are very proud of that. In my team, we do have apprentices, and AI and learning how to use responsibly AI to apply the technology to the networks in order to drive our strategic agenda is part of the things that our apprentices are learning. So for me, apprentice is not about sending them to do things you don't want to do. It's about actually be part of their learning and train them to be able to become the people you want to have in the future in our workforce. So we do honor our apprentice.
I guess they'll just learn in different ways. Okay.
I have to say, when I
Yes,
was
go on.
there, BT used to have a huge amount of apprentices in security, in cyber, actually. So
In
it's
my
about
team-
using the tools.
Exactly. In my team, we have people that they are trained how to use the tool, how to plan, how to program, how to actually deliver this.
Fascinating to see.
Well, I'm thrilled to hear that, because I do worry sometimes about AI, stripping out that learning process.
Big question.
Not at all.
Yeah.
In fact, it is actually helping them and make them more excited, because it is exciting to be part of this technology. If you are a curious mind, have the ability to get your hands dirty and really program and do this, and how you can apply this in different disciplines in the industry. This is fun, no? I mean, if you are a young engineer and that's what you want to be part of.
Well, these tools are fun at whatever age you are, actually. Okay, now I'm conscious of time, and I don't think I've allowed the audience to ask any questions, nor anyone on the Zoom call. So I do want to encourage you. I mean, we do have some other questions we can go through, but I do want to encourage you to make comments or ask questions, because I think that would be your input is very valuable as well. So if you do, put your hand up. Yes, and Audrey will bring you the mic, because then the folks on Zoom can hear you. And can you tell us who you are as well?
Yeah, my name is Anke, and I'm coming more from the business side. So I heard all the wonderful technical things which can enhance my life. But my question is, how are you going to monetize this? Because this is an industry where, look, there's a lot of progress. So you're going to have CapEx going on like crazy. You might squeeze your OpEx, but I'm old enough to remember, I think my first mobile contract, I paid £42 and I thought it was amazing. And now I think I pay about 10 and I have so much data, I could TikTok 24/7. So the question is, how are you going to monetize this? And the next question is, when it's about monetization, is about market power. Does the industry have the wrong market structure? Are there too many people around, and you need to reduce competition, that you can say to people, okay, the contract is not £10, but it has to be £25. So how are you going to finance all this and make money, market capitalization and all this stuff?
Yes, and we don't have the slide here, but the market caps of the techcos of the world is rather different from the telcos, with a few exceptions. I think Deutsche Telekom, who recently had their capital markets day, would say they've sort of bucked the trend with a few acquisitions. But by and large, telcos have overinvested and overbuilt, and there are maybe too many of them. But I don't know in the panel who'd like to answer that question. Does anyone want to comment? Certainly some of these folks here are going through mergers, which tell us about rationalization and building strength in important areas.
The question is, we're looking often from a competitive point as a relevant market, as an intellectual concept of a country. But the thing is it Europe? Is it actually the world? I mean, what is the relevant market in telecoms, really? I mean, should we broaden that concept to ultimately be able to monetize it?
So the example you know about being able to do TikTok forever with 10 quid a month is actually an example of the extraordinary customer welfare that telco has created over the years, and we shouldn't. But I mean, let's assume TikTok, yeah. But we shouldn't be dismissive about it. This has been an Herculean, like a massive effort from the industry. Our point of view is that you can create a more sustainable structure where operator can invest and achieve ROCE above WACC if you allow greater consolidation. Because you do not want the prices to go up. You want to be able to protect the customer benefit. But you need to be able to do it from a more sustainable position. If you think about, and that's one of, because you also need to remember, for example, competition is not just from MNOs, it's also from, in the UK, for example, huge amount of MVNOs who don't own the network. So it's a very healthy environment. You need to be able to protect competition. You need to do it in a way that actually the existing players can invest sustainably. And that has been sometimes the conundrum of the industry, that has not been possible. I personally think one of the best perspectives is the one offered by Mario Draghi, who published recently a study for the European Commission, where he really took a step back and thought about how do we actually ensure that Europe, stays at the forefront of innovation and development. It was very interesting. He started with the observation that if you strip out the technology and telecom sector, productivity growth in Europe isn't the same as the US. You put about the technology and then you have this massive productivity gap. And so, I do think that there's no single bullet, right? The magic bullet, but in thinking holistically about what are the regulation, regulation, but also investments, etc., necessary is the key. But it's not about increasing prices. You want to protect. Protect the customer benefit. It's about putting the position to be able to the telco can invest so they can do more for the customer, and in the process monetizing it. But from a position where your ROCE is above WACC, it doesn't always happen today.
Tough one. Do you want to add something briefly?
You talk about customer benefit. I spent for my mobile phone the amount of money I spend in 2 days on cappuccino. Customer benefit? I think, companies should be actually more thinking outside of the box and maybe consider rising prices, because not as a customer, but if I would be a shareholder, I literally spent more money in 2 days for cappuccino than for my mobile phone bill. So I think not sure whether rising prices, I know it's hard because if you have a competitive environment, but I would challenge whether the benefit it offers.
Not sure that will be on the agenda. Kimberly, do you want to add anything? Knowing that things are changing in Europe with the sharing of infrastructure and.
I mean, I think that's a tough sell, rising prices for the consumers. But I think it was interesting in the Draghi report that you mentioned. It seemed that there was a clear messaging, which is that from Draghi's perspective, that the market is Europe. It's not individual member states, and that seems to be the direction of travel that they're looking at in terms of creating that competition and consolidation.
Any comments from the audience? Anyone else?
So I think you absolutely can.
Do you want to say who you are, actually?
My name's Kate, and I'm definitely come from the commercial side and brand. I think you definitely can raise prices, but I guess what I'm not hearing tonight is that self-belief in what telco really delivers, and in what part of the market do we genuinely want to play. We've heard a lot of different use cases around broadcasting and network slicing and consumer, and people will pay more When I left home tonight, it was a hot mess because the Wi-Fi was down, and I would have left 20 quid on the table to get it. But if we can't raise prices for our consumers unless we believe in ourselves and have a really, really clear vision of what it is, what is the future of telco, what part of the market do we want to play in, and what is the value, because people will pay more for it because it's just part of our lives now. So just what is the DNA of telco in the current times?
Can I just make a comment?
Just quick, because we're running out of time.
Very
Yes.
quickly, actually. I believe in all the industries, in all the systems, there is a point where there's a growth, and then at some point it will start declining. At that point is where you need to find what is next. And what we have seen in the industry for the last year, more than a couple of years actually, the industry is trying to find what is next. And we have tried, and we keep trying. And for example, APIs, we are trying to find what is the opportunity there, because moving into the platform play, somebody mentioned telco versus technology companies. You're right, technology companies, they're doing better because they're operating in a platform model where the value is not the value from one, is the value of the number of transactions that they take place on the platform. So if we actually are successful to create a platform with all the different networks, somebody mentioned, who is your competition? Where is your market? You mentioned, where is your market, Anki? I believe in this API platform play, you need scale. And the more they are part of that, the more you expand your market, you could drive scale, and potentially you can create demand. So there is an attempt for the industry to find what is next. And I think this is positive. I don't think everything is so bad.
Okay.
And even the fact that you said, and we all acknowledge that connectivity is part of what we do. Imagine a world without mobile phone these days. I cannot. Imagine a world where without a Wi-Fi, I cannot. So we're still part of everyone's life. So we have to make an effort to make it work, right?
Okay. A question here. Let's take that question.
So I'm Sarah, I'm from PMP Strategy. So something that I'm wondering about, which is a slight deviation, but it kind of links to what you just said as well, is as we're looking towards the future, how about the things that we're leaving in the past? Because there's been a lot of carve-outs of infrastructure, particularly to private equity funds, and there's not been a lot of consolidation of that. So you've got a lot of funds owning disparate networks, particularly the altnet space, but also, when you're looking at things like Virgin have a fixed network as an example, and then you've got BT. How do you see that will evolve over time when paralleled with, say, like the NBN in Australia, where you've got a single network? It is a natural monopoly, really, and in the UK, perhaps it should be as well, but the market structure isn't there yet. And are we doing enough to support how that infrastructure is managed in the long term?
Oh, Kimberly has to answer that one, I think.
Sorry, Kimberly.
It's not really in my wheelhouse, but okay. What I will say about the NBN Co, and I will say that it was 12 years ago that I was in Australia and involved in the NBN Co rollout, but I'm not sure that they've pretty much completed the rollout now. I'm not sure that it's viewed as a complete success, and I'm not sure if part of the reason for that is because it's a monopoly, or pretty much a monopoly, in Australia. So whether or not that's the right direction of travel for the UK, I'm not sure, but I'm probably not best to comment on that on this panel.
I was in Australia and visited NBN, spent some time with them 6 weeks ago, and they are still learning how to serve their own customers better. So it's not perfect yet, let's put it that way. Kimberly, is there anything else? Are you in love with telecom as well, just like the other two panelists here?
Well, I think you said at the beginning that it's sexy, and my team that are here can attest to the fact that I spend most of my time walking around convincing everyone that telco's sexy and they want to work on my deals. So that's my main takeaway.
Okay, well, I think it leaves us to say thank you very much to everyone for contributing. You're speaking to people who are living and breathing this enormous transformation and tribulations that exist in this market. So thank you, everyone. A round of applause, and thank you to WiTT again.